The night air hung thick with gasoline and fear as flashing red and blue lights sliced through the quiet hum of a roadside gas station. A man stood tall beside his daughter, their reflection caught in the chrome of a police motorcycle. Two figures trapped in the glare of suspicion. The officers moved with that cold, rehearsed certainty that comes when judgment arrives before the truth. A question lingered unspoken in the air. What crime had he committed beyond existing in the wrong skin at the wrong moment? But as the scene unfolded, something shifted, a tension no one could name yet. Behind the calm defiance in his eyes lay a secret that would soon flip the power dynamic entirely. Because this wasn't just any man the cops were harassing. And when they found out who he really was, the night at that gas station would become a story they'd never forget. Marcus Reed had always kept to himself. To most people in the small Nevada town, he was the quiet mechanic who fixed their bikes, nodded politely at the grocery store, and minded his business. Few knew much about his past, and that was exactly how he preferred it. After years of living in the noise of big cities, he wanted his daughter, Lila, to grow up somewhere simple, somewhere she could laugh without fear. That Friday evening, they had stopped at the old Route 16 gas station on their way home from Lila's soccer game. The sun was melting into the desert horizon, staining the sky in streaks of gold and crimson. Marcus was filling the tank, humming to the radio, while Lila balanced a tray of fries and milkshakes from the diner next door. It was one of those small, perfect moments that make life feel almost normal. Then a police cruiser rolled in. The rhythmic crunch of gravel under tires broke the calm. Two officers stepped out, their presence sharp and heavy. One of them, Officer Dillon, scanned the lot with that kind of restless energy that searched for trouble where there was none. His eyes landed on Marcus, then lingered a second too long. Maybe it was the tattoos peeking out from Marcus's sleeve, or the matte black motorcycle parked nearby, its paint catching the dying light. Maybe it was just habit, the reflex to see threat instead of man. Marcus noticed the look but stayed silent, unscrewing the gas cap like he hadn't seen it. He'd learned that silence was sometimes the safest armor, but silence couldn't always save you, not in places where assumptions traveled faster than the truth. As the first officer approached, hand resting casually on his holster, Marcus felt that familiar chill of being seen not as a father, but as a target. The officer's boots stopped just inches from Marcus's shadow. His tone was casual, but his stance was anything but. "Everything all right here?" he asked, the words shaped like a question but delivered like a warning. Marcus nodded once, his hands visible, calm, deliberate. Lila clutched her tray a little tighter. Sensing something wrong in the way her father's jaw tightened, Dillon's partner, Officer Briggs, circled the car, peering through the windows as if expecting to find something criminal waiting in the back seat. "Where you headed?" Dillon pressed. Marcus gave the truth. Home. But truth rarely satisfied men who came looking for suspicion. The officer's gaze drifted again to the ink on Marcus's forearm, a set of intricate wings framing a skull. To Dillon, it screamed gang affiliation. To Marcus, it was a story of loyalty, of brothers long gone, and a chapter he had buried years ago. Briggs motioned toward the motorcycle. "That yours?" Marcus nodded. "Mind if I run the plates?" It wasn't really a question. He didn't protest. He'd been down this road before. As Briggs walked away, Dillon stayed close, asking more questions that weren't about law or safety, just thinly veiled provocation. Why was he driving so late? Did he have any weapons? Any warrants? Each question carried the same subtext. Prove your innocence, because your skin says otherwise. Lila's eyes filled with silent confusion. "Daddy?" she whispered, her voice barely reaching his ear. Marcus crouched beside her, his tone steady. "It's okay, baby. Just stay still." Inside, though, he was fighting the same mix of rage and dread that had haunted him his whole life. Then Dillon's radio crackled. Briggs's voice came through, low but sharp. "Hey, you might want to see this." Dillon's brows furrowed. He turned toward the cruiser, glancing back at Marcus with something between disbelief and unease. The night air shifted. The balance of power, so firmly held by the officers, began to wobble. Because what Briggs found in that database wasn't the record of a criminal. It was the name of a man they had unknowingly cornered. A man whose past demanded respect in circles where fear was currency. Officer Dillon approached the cruiser, his boots dragging slightly in the gravel. Briggs was staring at the monitor, his expression somewhere between confusion and regret. "You're not gonna believe this," he muttered. Dillon leaned over, his eyes catching the screen, and the color drained from his face. The name on the record was unmistakable. Marcus Reed, former national road captain of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. Not a small-time drifter, not a suspect to intimidate, but a man whose name carried weight in a world few dared to challenge. He'd left that life behind years ago, but his reputation still burned bright in the shadows of law enforcement circles. Dillon straightened up slowly, the false confidence in his voice faltering. Marcus watched them from beside his daughter, calm as ever, but his eyes were cold steel. The same eyes that once led hundreds of men across miles of asphalt, bound by loyalty and the unspoken law of respect. The same eyes that had stared down rivals and lived to tell the story. He didn't raise his voice or make a move. He didn't need to. His silence was its own kind of power now. When Dillon returned, his tone had changed. "Looks like everything checks out," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The tension hung heavy, the kind that made even the night air feel thicker. Marcus didn't respond. He just held his daughter's hand, turned toward the car, and opened the door. Lila looked up at the officers, confusion still etched on her face. "Daddy, why were they scared?" she asked quietly. Marcus paused, meeting Dillon's gaze for the briefest moment. "Because," he said finally, his voice low and steady, "they thought they knew who I was." Then he shut the door. The sound echoed like an ending and a warning. The officers stood frozen, their authority suddenly small beneath the weight of the truth they'd uncovered. The man they had tried to humiliate had once commanded a brotherhood that even they feared. And though Marcus had walked away from that world, its shadow still protected him in ways they couldn't begin to understand. The engine rumbled to life, low and steady, as Marcus guided the car back onto the open road. The gas station lights faded into the distance, swallowed by the desert night. For a long while, neither he nor Lila spoke. The only sound was the hum of tires against asphalt and the faint rustle of wind through the cracked window. Marcus's grip on the wheel softened as the adrenaline ebbed. He glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror, her small face illuminated by the dashboard glow. She was safe. That was all that mattered. Still, a bitter taste lingered. The familiar ache of being reminded that no matter how far he ran from his past or how quiet he lived, the world would always see his color before his character. He thought about the officers, how quickly arrogance had turned to fear once they'd seen his name. It wasn't respect they'd felt. It was self-preservation. They hadn't backed off because they'd realized their mistake. They'd backed off because they were afraid of what his history could bring down on them, and that realization sat heavy in Marcus's chest. Lila finally broke the silence. "Daddy, are you mad at them?" she asked softly. Marcus exhaled, eyes fixed on the road ahead. "No, baby. I'm tired for them," he said, "because they'll keep living scared of the wrong things." In the rear view, the gas station lights were just dots now, ghosts of a moment that could have gone so much worse. He thought of all the fathers who didn't get to drive away, all the nights that ended with sirens instead of silence. As the miles stretched on, Marcus knew this was just another story that would never make the news, but it would stay with him and maybe one day with her. The lesson wasn't about power or revenge. It was about survival, about the cost of always having to prove your own humanity, and somewhere beyond the horizon, beneath the endless sweep of desert sky, he whispered a thought meant for no one but himself. One day, maybe they'll stop fearing us long enough to see us. A pause. Then the night swallowed the words whole, leaving only the sound of the road, steady, relentless, and true.